To order, and I want to do a roll call, starting with Collis.
Be present.
Mark?
Present.
Jim?
Yes, here.
Kelly?
Here.
And myself, yes. We have 5 members, 2 of them are participating by phone. Okay, so if we have the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So the main purpose of tonight's meeting was to hear more on the grant opportunity for the Diesel Grant Program, Diesel Emissions Reduction Act, DERA program. And we're also going to hear from the police department on a grant opportunity. So let's call Public Works Director up.
Good evening.
Good evening.
As we discussed at the last meeting, there's a federal EPA program, the Diesel Emission Reduction Act, which has a grant that is administered by each of the states. In this case, the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services is sort of the award for the state of New Hampshire for this grant program. Just for a quick overview, in case anybody's watching, the idea is to replace older diesel engines and reduce the emissions associated with them by replacing with either newer, cleaner diesels or alternative fuel vehicles such as electric or gas or propane. As we discussed at the last meeting, my intention or the request was to apply for a grant which provides up to 45% reimbursement towards the cost of a replacement vehicle. And I would like to replace one of our curbside trucks, curbside trash and recycling trucks. The approximate cost of our trucks now is about $340,000, $330,000. An EV truck can be about $600,000 to replace, plus you have to have the charging infrastructure added to your facility. The grant, if we were awarded the full amount of the 45%, that brings the acquisition cost right down into that same wheelhouse as what we're currently paying for a combustion engine. There are some savings, as we talked about at the last meeting, for operations and maintenance. I tried to, for the folks following online, or on the phone rather, I tried to include some of our actual expenses that, so everybody kind of gets a sense of the scale for what operation and maintenance of our existing curbside trucks are. We have 2 primary trucks and a backup, but the primary trucks are averaging about $35,000 a year in fuel cost. They're pretty inefficient vehicles. They're big, they're heavy, they're carrying a lot of equipment. Plus, you have to use the diesel to power the arm for the pickup and for the packer for the back of the machine. So they're down around 4.5 to 5 gallons per hour on the road. I also try to track how often those existing diesel engines are in service. One of the questions we had at the last meeting was reliability. So we're kind of talking about moving to a relatively new technology EV or battery EV, and can we be confident that we're going to have a reliable piece of equipment on our hands. Some of the experience so far has been mixed, primarily the early adopters. About 10 years ago, City of Chicago was one I mentioned as the first in the nation, first in North America, as a matter of fact. They took delivery in 2014, and they had a pretty rough time with their machine. It was a startup company at the time. Motive is the name of the company. They've since looks like shied away from the larger scale stuff, and they're back down into cars and smaller engine type equipment. But they had so many reliability issues with their truck in Chicago, they ended up suing and won under the Lemon Law for that particular piece of equipment. But there's been some others. Most of them have been from 2019 to 2020 and newer. Certainly it's picked up a lot of steam in the last couple of years. In particular, this program is funded or will fund between the 19, 20, and 21 DARA grant windows, a few dozen different machines around the country. But I tried to look at the reliability of our current machines. The diesel engines, as the new EPA air quality standards have come about, there's exhaust control systems and emissions control systems that scrub or add diesel exhaust fluid or filter. There's a few different solutions that companies have come up with, but we've had a tough time across our entire fleet, but in particular our trash and recycling curbside trucks. I just looked at the last 12 months worth of meetings. At 5 of those meetings, our primary recycling truck was on the action matrix as being out of service. So some of those were sequential, so that means it was down for 2+, 4+, 6+, I think was the longest window we didn't have that particular machine. But 5 times over the course of a year, it was on the action matrix on those bi-monthly meetings that we had. 2 for the primary trash and 4 for the backup truck. So it doesn't count number of days offline, of course, but it gives you a sense that we're regularly taking them off for various things, but primarily emissions related. Tends to be the longer downtime. If we can't figure it out because of the complex nature of some of these systems and how they sense the quality of the air in and out of the combustion air, we need to send that out to a dealer usually for diagnostic repair, and that can tack on days or weeks to that process. So I try to look at cost of fuel. As I mentioned, we're averaging about $35,000 a year in fuel. I also took a look at maintenance. When you look at maintenance, one of the big savings going from an internal combustion engine to a EV engine, there's fewer moving parts, but also without that engine, there's fewer requirements for things, obviously emissions, but cooling system is different for an electric motor, as you might imagine. They're a lot easier on brakes, and as we talked about, there's a regenerative braking system, so as you brake, you're actually charging the batteries each time you brake, which is nice for a trash truck that's stopping and starting every few seconds, especially in the mountainous areas. The exhaust system, of course, repairs, a lot less preventative maintenance required, lubrication, there's no engine oil to change, which adds up. So I took the same 3 vehicles and looked at their age since they were placed into service. One's just over 3 years, one's almost 7 years, and one's almost 10 years old. Averaging for the newer vehicle, we're averaging about $4,100 a year in those categories that are sort of either primarily a diesel engine related or brakes, which estimates that some of the bus companies have used. You're putting brakes on at a much reduced rate. They like to estimate about 25% of the cost over a year's worth of brake maintenance. So, but as these trucks age, they're getting a bit more expensive, so they jump up. Our 2 older trucks are up over $7,500 a year each in those diesel-related or brake-related repairs. Not to mention the mechanic time or the time lost if we have to farm it out for some of this work. We've got some obvious benefits, greenhouse gas emissions, if we don't even get into the cost. But right off the top, it looks like we could be conservatively in the $10,000 to $20,000 a year savings for operations and maintenance. If you look at the current cost of electricity, current cost of diesel, which is improving as we go here, but electricity, of course, just jumped up. But greenhouse gas emissions, if you talk about one of the industry standards, is they call it wheel-to-well efficiency. So that basically says if you're comparing electricity to diesel, you have to compare, okay, when it's coming out of the ground for each source, what it takes to either generate the electricity at the power plant and get it here, or what it takes to pump out the oil, refine it, turn it into diesel. So wheel-to-well efficiency, you can save at least 30% when you convert to an electric vehicle versus a conventionally powered engine. So there's that obvious environmental benefit. There's some noise benefits to it, of course, about 10 decibels, maybe more, quieter for a truck. And if you might remember from high school, the decibel scale is logarithmic, so 10 decibels is quite a difference, I should say. So that's important both for our drivers who are in that truck 10 hours a day, plus the residents, of course, in the neighborhoods. It's been a while since we had some major complaints, but early morning starts usually at, we let the trucks get into the neighborhoods at 7, and that can be a little troublesome for some folks. Let's see, we had some questions that I tried to note down for the actual grant itself. Maximum grant funding is a 45% reimbursement. They are notifying the first round of awards October 1st-ish. So if we apply, the deadline is the 9th of September. We should find out beginning of October. And they're trying to do a quick turnaround on this because there's only 1.4 million in New Hampshire available. So the idea is they want to know early if there's going to be a second round available, because the whole program, you need to have your equipment ordered and hopefully delivered by the end of 2023. So that's tight when you start talking about a heavy piece of heavy equipment. You know, our curbside trucks are on a year-plus lead time right now, just the conventional ones. So they really want to turn this around quickly, so we should find out if we do apply pretty rapidly. The unit must be in service, normal service, they say, for at least 5 years, which coincidentally lines up with at least the biggest player in the game now is Mack has their EV version. They've got a 5-year warranty, which does include the battery.
It does include the battery?
Does, yes, it does. Including, you know, charge life. It's going to maintain, they'll warranty a certain level of charge capacity.
And how long do
after
we
you
keep our trucks now?
So right now, we're in a 10 to 12 year cycle. Some of the heavy equipment has been too early to say for sure how long they've lasted, but the smaller, lighter duty vehicles, the manufacturer expected life expectancy for batteries is 15 to 20 years. Some of the older, you know, Teslas and some of the first battery vehicles are starting to get replaced or thinking about getting replaced now. But that's the hope is that similar for heavy duty, and even if it's a little less, that's going to be right about what we would normally be for a whole period anyway. So that's good news. Charging stations can be included in a project for the grant at that same 45% funding level. They do not allow lease. Oh,
Adam, I'm sorry,
Yes.
what can be included?
charging stations.
Thank you.
Yes. And that's unique to electric. Any of the alternative fuel, you can't build a propane storage farm at your facility or anything like that. EV is the only flavor of alternative fuel where they allow that additional piece to be included in the project.
Do you have a price on what that would cost?
I think it's probably in the 25 to 30,000 range to get a heavy duty fast. We'd want a fast DC charger, so you know you don't want to have a situation where it's, you know, trickle charge overnight sort of thing.
How long does it take to charge the batteries?
Varies by manufacturer, and by charging manufacturer, but it's usually in the 2 to 3 hour range
Okay.
for a fast charge. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Collis.
Mark?
I just wanted to make a general note. I'm writing as fast as I can, so I'm going to have to rely on Gail to do her typical excellent job of taking minutes and getting those minutes distributed. And I assume, and I certainly hope, there's enough time built into the timeline for the grant to allow us to review the minutes and think about them in more detail.
Unfortunately, we're not going to have that much time.
Well, how much time will we have?
Grant has to be in by the 9th.
So the
Okay, well, when can we have the minutes by?
Derek, what do you think? She has 48 hours, right?
No, she has 5 business
Oh,
days.
5 business days.
I think we were seeking a board's decision on authorizing the application to be submitted. You would still need to accept, if awarded and for what percentage, you would at that point need to accept those grant funds. And as this would be likely a 2023 purchase, it would still need to go through the budget process as well, so.
Well,
Peter, question for Adam.
go ahead.
So the action we're taking is just to authorize submission of the grant.
That's
at this
correct.
point.
That's correct. Yep.
Okay.
I think Mark.
Peter, can I ask my question?
Go ahead, Mark.
The price I heard, and can you explain that a little bit better? Is it $25,000 per charging station? And if so, how many stations are in that station, and how many would we have to build if we were to get a fleet of these?
That's a good question. Depending on the manufacturer of the station, they try to make these universal, so depending on which we would end up with, some are made for dual charging, some are quad charging. I'd try to get something that, would be nice if we didn't have to then turn around and add a second charging station. So if we could, I would get a quad. That way, if we ever get to a point where we've got multiple vehicles, we'd be covered, but.
So
Okay.
along similar lines, does this include training for in-house personnel? I assume we're going to have some training on these sort of things. Does that include as part of the package? That's one question. And the second question, what's the relative time for running the route of the electric vehicle versus the diesel platform? In other words, could he run a longer route and realize some savings in getting the route done quicker? Do we know?
So for the first question, unless the manufacturer has some sort of incentive, manufacturer TBD, but if they have some sort of incentive to, I'm sure they include some level of basic, operation and maintenance training, but not full level, fleet mechanic training. So that's going to have to be figured out on our end. It wouldn't be included in the grant. As far as the route timing goes, I think. I don't believe there's going to be a significant time savings. Right now, the trucks usually fuel up in the morning. Sometimes they'll go pick up the schools where they can get those early, and then they'll come back with the school load, which is a pretty significant amount in the bodies, and then they'll fuel up at that time before they wait to get back on the route for 7 o'clock. So there may be some savings on that end. But I don't believe, the speed will increase, the traffic level is going to be about the same. It takes about the same amount of time, you can't really push the limits there. So I think there'd be maybe marginal speed savings, but it's going to be pretty close to the same.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
You all set, Mark?
No, I have one more question. On the charging stations, Adam, do they all require the same amount of charging, or do we have to make the stations applicable or applicable to various charging rates for voltage?
So on the heavy-duty trucks, they have kind of a slower charging methods, and then there's a faster DC charging for the higher voltage. We've got 3-phase at the garage, so it's not like we'd have to pull in a different power source. It'd be a matter of any sub panel and then the charging station itself, just depending on where we'd want that to be.
Let's why don't you go ahead and finish up with what you have, then maybe there's some other questions. I think you
Okay.
left off.
I didn't have a ton left, but I did want to mention they don't allow leases or lease-to-own agreements. That's one of the newer things that, especially that MAC is starting to offer, which is kind of an all-in package. It's not allowed as part of the grant project. So if we are unsuccessful and this does come back around on the regular CIP replacement, we might want to talk about a lease option if we did want to dip our toe in it. And then Kelly, I think, had asked about status reporting. So for the first 2 years, you have to do quarterly. They call them very brief reports. But then every year for the first 5 years, you have to do one annual report as well. And then finally, I do Mark and Collis. You'll have this in your email as well, so it might save that minutes question. But I did try to jot down as many different places in the kind of the year that they have kind of hopped on board this. Some manufacturer info and stuff on page 2. So. New York City and Los Angeles are probably the two biggest there, where New York's been a pilot host for MAC's LR vehicle since 2020. They liked it so much they ordered 7 more for 2022. They've put a goal of 2040 to be 100% electric vehicle in New York City. Los Angeles is moving forward with a bunch, and they've got a goal of 100% electric by 2035. But then there's a series of others that have started to convert as well. I guess one of the last things that came up at the last meeting also was a question Don Ball at the Truck Center had been referenced that they might have some experience with it. I did get in touch with Don. They don't have any here in Goffstown, so doesn't have direct experience, but his parent company, STA Transportation, does have a few EV buses. I think he said California and Florida maybe was where they were running them.
Vermont, he told me they had some. in
I'm sorry?
Vermont. He told me they had some in Vermont.
Oh, Vermont, okay. Right now, they haven't been super thrilled with the experience thus far, from what he's heard, although they have requested a grant for themselves for 90 more EV buses across the country. So I don't know. I don't know how to deconflict those two ends of the argument, but uptime and the serviceability piece of where do you go and how long is it gone because the service center maybe not close by where they've got these couple vehicles. But he did also give me a sheet, a one-pager that they had done initially, I think at some point, trying to compare the cost of ownership between a conventionally powered bus and an electric powered bus. Some of the info that's on there is a little bit off. The cost for electricity is a tiny bit low. The cost for diesel is quite a bit low. And of course, for us, our mileage, diesel mileage is quite a bit lower, so we would have a bigger gap, bigger delta for us. So our return on investment for that difference in what it would cost us to switch to an EV, that payback period is a lot shorter than what they might have seen at the bus company, but it does have to run to work. So I think critical to this whole discussion is the board's willingness to maintain a fleet of 4 rather than 3, because I do not think, I agree with the board that it is early in this, technology, relatively speaking, and I don't want to put us in a position where one of 3 trucks, which we do rely on fairly often, as you saw in that memo there, several weeks a year, we're needing that 3rd truck because one of the other 2 is offline. I don't want to put us in a position where that 3rd truck is now becoming a front line more and more, and that's it, our only line of defense against having trash backing up curbside. So if we can maintain a 4th vehicle by not trading in the one that we've already awarded and we're awaiting delivery of next year, that would give us 4 vehicles. We now trade in one of those for electric, and now we have 3 conventional, 1 electric. It doesn't hurt us quite as much, but hopefully, if things work, we can get a real bang for the buck, save $10,000 to $20,000 on our operating budget a year just for that 1 truck. It'd be a nice way to dip our toe in the water without so much risk.
Question for Derek. You were saying, did you mention that we had to put this in the 23 budget?
Well, and I guess that's a question, under the DES, it says required project completion is September of 2023 unless extended.
Right.
Would you be able to do this as part of the 23 budget?
We could. The order, we could place an order as soon as, if it gets through the process, as soon as budget passes. I would think we'd probably want to wait, since I don't have a capital reserve fund. I don't have that, that quick moving
Can we
ability.
go to
but-
page 6 of this?
Oh, and the diesel grant package?
Yep,
Yeah,
page
so
6. Go down one, in the middle at 1, 2, 3, 4. It doesn't
So,
correspond with what this says. This says project completion by 9/30. This one says each existing unit must have a minimum of 3 years of anticipated operational life remaining. Therefore, units that are scheduled for retirement prior to October 1st, 25 are not eligible.
Right.
So I think that's the diesel engine that you're taking offline.
So they don't want you to, they wouldn't want us to say the one that we've already ordered the replacement for, they wouldn't want us to replace that one. They would want us to replace the next one in line, which is scheduled now for, I think, 26 in CIP.
Okay, so you wouldn't put it in this year's budget, or in 23's budget, if we're not gonna do it until 26.
If we're awarded the grant, we would, my budget proposal for 23 would include this purchase because we've been awarded the grant, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but does
So
the vehicle you wanna replace meet this criteria?
it would, because I normally wouldn't be putting it in my budget for next year. The
So
only time I
instead of
would,
the one you have in there now, you would be buying the,
that was for 22. We had one scheduled for replacement this year. We've already made that decision, that's already being replaced. So I would be
But we don't have, you have one in CIP for 23?
No, no, because we wouldn't have been able to anyway, but we space our curbside trucks 3 to 4 years apart, so I'm pretty sure it's in for 26. So the request now wouldn't go into the budget if the grant isn't awarded. Understand? So I'm not,
I understand, but we're going to be replacing a truck that's not due for replacement
correct.
for 3 more years, for 2 more years, or 3 more
Correct.
years.
Right, so we're short cycling, yes, that truck, yep.
So we've lost the value of that truck because there's no value to them, right? We can't sell them, they have to be destroyed, or the motor has to be destroyed?
Right, the one that goes, yeah, you can see, you get scrap value is allowed, but you have to, right, you can't turn around and sell the diesel engine out of it or sell the truck with the diesel engine in it. So we'd be,
That's the whole point, to get the diesels off.
I understand that, but you're taking a truck that's still got 3
I-
years worth
I
of life
understand
left.
that too.
You
That's
know,
a
that
risk.
actually increases your purchase of the $600,000 truck because you're losing 3 years of service out of it.
I mean,
If you figure it's 100,000 or whatever, 50,000 a year amortization, that's still, you're losing.
right, yeah, you're definitely short cycling the replacement. You know, yeah, that's the name of this game anyway.
So I find it kind of curious that, was it the state of Vermont is doing the electric school buses and said, we're not real crazy with our experience so far, but in the next breath they say, but we'll take 90 more of them.
That's across the country, Carl, so I think maybe in Vermont, up in northern Vermont, that may not work up there too well, but
Right.
in Florida and California, where they don't have the same issues, it might work fine.
Well, I thought specific to Vermont, okay.
I think that was Don telling me the anecdote about
Oh, okay.
what he's heard from the mechanic, and it's probably the Vermont location versus nationwide. STA's applied for 90 more.
Got it, thank you.
Kelly?
A bunch. Okay, so the notification of awards for the first round is planned for October 1st. Do you know when we have to accept by?
So I have not heard a drop dead date on that. I presume that would come with the award, and it
Okay.
may depend on how many applicants they have. If they think they are going to need to go to a round 2 and they want that to turn, they may give us a deadline. If they just don't have a lot,
So then,
it may
my
not.
next question would be, if that all worked out, we decided to move forward, it went through budget, it got voted yes on a warrant article, and we accepted, or we voted it down at that point after we've accepted, what happens for return of funds?
so it's a reimbursement in this case, so we wouldn't actually get any funds. So there's a couple of places where we could actually bail out, you know.
That's what I'm asking, if we accept it
So we accept that no funds change
because of
hands.
the window, and then it doesn't pass through on a ballot,
I think the state, in the past anyway, with this type of grant, they know that each basically appropriation subject to town meeting anyway. So what happens, the timeline is, they would tell us back, yes, we've recommended you for award. If we say we want to proceed forward, they then give that package to the governor, they bring it to executive council. That vote occurs. Once that happens, now we're actually officially accepted as a grant recipient. And then normally with these, it's not in their package here, I could verify with DES if it was really a sticking point, you know, once we submit, if we're gonna submit. But presumably, they know it has to pass through the budget process, town meeting, and if we don't get the funds, we don't buy it. If we don't buy it, there's nothing to request reimbursement for. Because it's a reimbursement, they're not putting anything out, so there's less, you know, it's not like an upfront dump like some of the other programs.
Can I just ask one more on that? It says required, as you said, project completion, September 30th. That, I assume that means the truck is here and moving.
That's how the federal,
Well, I actually watched the presentation they had, and they said it takes a year before you get it. So how are we gonna do that?
it'd be tight. So they, I don't know if it's in this note or in on the federal site, they have a note that they will entertain extension requests, but it's not guaranteed. You know, how do I know? But I think the whole idea of the program is to get this alternative fuel vehicle if the The market dynamics just don't support a 10 or 11-month turnaround. They don't. I can't see the government turning around and saying, well, I know we're at month 11, but you don't have it, so you're out of luck.
So wouldn't you have to put an order in with a company soon? And they're gonna do that contingent on this, that, and the other thing?
Usually, they're going to want to make sure that you've actually got an appropriation. Some companies will do it, and you're on your own to figure it out later if you want to run that risk. I don't think we can do that, but it would be, you know, March, talking March timeline, and now you're, you know, if we really push it, we're at a 9-month window for delivery, and if it can't happen, we'd probably want to start the request for an extension maybe even prior to that. If we're awarded and we get to that point, that might be the first response is, yes, we'll accept it, but, you know, so I could see that happening where we'd want some kind of a, at least.
But in 13 months, that truck's gotta be on the road.
Their goal is to have, yes,
And-
have that as a
and
delivery.
We don't have permission to buy that truck until March.
Right, right.
But as you said, they want the reduction, so you would think they'd give us an extension if it
And it's
came.
an, you know,
Yeah,
it's
you
an
would
ongoing
think.
program. and-
Yeah, you think.
Yeah.
But I was, you know,
Well, I know,
Right.
but we gotta try
Right.
to be rational about this thing, and at least,
well, we have a job that protects the taxpayers in the town too,
well, that's
so,
true.
Right.
That's
Right.
That's why
Yeah,
we're
it'd be
here.
Yeah,
quite a limb to go out to just buy it and hope that it happens. I think
Yeah.
we'd want some sort of a warm fuzzy from them if, you know, hey, given everything that's happened here.
I think, I'm sorry, Kelly.
No, it's okay. My next question is, we've talked, are they fully EV, or is there any fuel alternative on any of these? So, or do we get a backup battery? Like, what happens if the connection to the charging station isn't great one night, and then the next morning the truck doesn't turn on? What do we do?
Right. So, depending on the manufacturer, you've got various distances to the nearest service center. I think the closest right now is in Tewksbury, Mass. For Mack. I don't know of any other manufacturer that's closer than that. There may be. I've heard that Hooksett or Londonderry might be getting a new service area, but as yet TBD. So like any other truck, on our curbside trucks, if some of these failures happen, we just can't do anything here with it. I'm sure that's going to be the same with an EV. So then it's a matter of, some manufacturers are flying their techs to places. There's still not that many EV trucks out there that they can afford to do that. I think you fast forward a few years and that's not sustainable, but, right, that's the primary reason I wouldn't want it to be one of three, because you just can't afford to operate long in that scenario if you don't have a known. But in theory, we're under warranty. It's a warranty repair like any other. Get it repaired.
Okay. And then, so we have on the list of people who currently have this, Maine, Toronto, Canada, New Haven, Connecticut, and Enfield, Connecticut. If we apply for the grant in the meantime, can we set up conversations with them to hear about what their experience has been like? Is that a possibility of something we could do?
I think it makes sense. Some of the bigger, those that have had it longer are bigger and harder to get somebody on the horn to talk about. I'm sure they get calls, quite often, but we can try a little bit more. One of the gentlemen that spoke at the webinar today was from New York Sanitation, so sounds like he's the type that would probably give us more info.
Wasn't there a thing that if you give them 60 days notice that they'll actually bring one up here and you can try it out?
One of the manufacturers, yeah. So that's certainly something to talk about. But I think the biggest thing, I'm sure they're pretty whiz bang. I think the biggest thing is the maintenance history, and if they work when they work, but they don't work 60% of the time, that's a problem.
No doubt about it.
well, I think Eco Maine would be one to reach out to.
Yeah.
They're a neat case because their plan, I think they've got them in operation, is they have a waste energy plant, so they're hauling waste, burning it, turning it into electricity, and putting it right back in the trucks to go pick up more waste.
Where are they located?
I don't know, actually. It's a good question.
I'll have to check that out. I'd love to look at it.
Okay, that was all I had.
Any other questions? Carlos, you got any more questions?
No, not at the time.
Mark?
No, I'm satisfied right now.
Okay. I still don't like the idea of getting rid of a good truck, 3 years left of life left, but I don't know. Okay. I think, don't know if we want to go and apply for the grant and then make a decision later.
I think we have some legwork to do. I mean, it's still a close turnaround to October. It gives us a month. It's still not a lot of time. I mean, still has to go through budget and on the ballot, but I'm in favor of applying for it. Because also, we could apply and the state could give us 10%, which
Right.
obviously changes this entire conversation, because then we're, you know, talking about funds and functionality, which we're still talking about funds, but, you know, with greater impact. So I think we should apply for it and then try to do more legwork to get more information. If we could talk to some of these people, if we can go to Maine and see it, I mean, I'd be willing to do that.
Yeah, I agree. I'd like some more information. I know we're gonna have to scramble to get it, but, let's scramble and get, so that we have it. And more of a general comment, yeah, I agree with everybody, of course, we're stewards and shepherds of the taxpayers' dollars. That's top on my priority list, but also high on my priority list is the health and safety of our citizens. You know, and if we can get vehicles out on the road that are running up and down our community streets and are quieter and are not spewing emissions and can help further the health and safety of our citizens, that goes a ways with me as well. So it's not always about the pure dollars and cents, as important as that is.
Thank you. Mark, you got anything else?
No, I'm all set. Thank you.
So, Kelly, want to make a motion?
Sure. I saw a specific one in here. So I'll make a motion to authorize the Director of Public Works to apply for the fiscal year 2022 Diesel Emissions Reduction Act funding to replace a curbside refuse truck with an electric vehicle.
Second.
I'll second it, yep.
I don't like that recommendation, though.
Huh? I don't like that,
Yeah, I don't like that either. Wait.
because it almost says we're authorized, we're okay in the purchase of the truck.
To
Apply
apply
for
for
the
funding.
grant.
So it's all it is apply for funding,
Apply
not,
for-
not to replace.
To apply for funding contingent
We're
on...
applying for a grant that would provide funding.
Correct.
Right. So how do you want to word the motion?
Authorize the Director of Public Works to apply for the grant pending acceptance on, I don't know, Select Board, Budget Committee, and voters. Further discussion. That was a lot of a motion.
Well, I'll second that anyways.
So we already have one on the floor that was seconded. So first we gotta,
Oh,
we're going to, would you agree to change your first motion?
Yes.
And would you agree to change?
second, yeah.
Okay, so now how do you want to read this? Recommend the authorization for the Director of Public Works to apply for the FY 2022 Diesel Emission Reduction Act funding, period.
Yeah.
We don't have to say anything about replacing the curbside refuse truck with an electric vehicle. We're just asking him to apply for that emissions grant.
Works for me.
Never really work, you know? No, selectmen team.
Hey, Mark, you're still on speaker, just in case you're about to say something about me.
No, absolutely not.
Jim, did you second that motion?
I did.
Okay. So does everybody hear the motion?
Yes,
I did.
Okay, all in I'm gonna do a roll call. Collis?
yes,
Mark?
No,
Myself's a yes.
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 So motion passes 4-1. 0.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
I'll turn that quickly, and then we'll start trying to get some, either a demo or some more user experience before the results come
Adam,
back.
after you submit, can you send us a copy of the grant submission? If it's possible, I don't know if it's electronic or not, but.
Yep, can do.
Thank you.
Could you also look into a lease? Or lease,
Can't.
lease, at least, well, no, I mean, if this doesn't work.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Well, how, does that make sense? I don't know. Maybe that might solve some of the problems.
Okay.
One
I
thing
will-
at a time, Jeff.
Well, I know, if you have time, it's something that,
I can do that.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
We have the police chief up next, who unfortunately fell behind on this one also.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, I mean, it had to be in by 9/7.
Yes, that is true. Thank you all for having me, and thank you all for being here. First and foremost, I'd like to say on behalf of the agency, thank you to all the board members and everybody who put together the Employee Appreciation Week and Night. I got nothing but positive comments from my staff. I think it was a huge success, in my opinion, and our staff's opinion, so thank you all very much for that.
You're welcome.
I really
Thank you.
appreciate that.
Would you give us a quick update on Maple Ave before you get
Yes,
started?
thank you. I would. Today was the third day of our first 3 days of school. I'm happy to note that the town ordinance that we passed and the changes that we put on the Maple Ave buses only has been very successful in this first 3 days. We've had 7 officers there Tuesday, the first day of school. It was very busy, busier than I've seen in a long time. We had a lot of people walking, but traffic on Elm Street was not backed up at all. Wasn't backed up to Main Street, which was really the goal there. It seems that our messaging with the town's platforms as well as the school's platforms was very effective and successful. We had an open house at the schools the day before Monday, and my SROs had commented that most parents, when they talked to them, were well aware of the change, so that was good. The first day, we only had about maybe 5 to 10 people that we had to kind of help educate. I got from the school that there was only 2 staff members that were late, and that was because that was their first day of school from a different town, and they weren't expecting the traffic at Wallace Road, and they weren't expecting the traffic change there. It since has readjusted, and we're pretty successful. I was with Brian Bolke and Scott Gross the first couple of days, and they were pleasantly surprised as well. I will tell you that the traffic that we saw on South Mast at all the way backed up from the Wallace Road traffic circle, I was there that morning on Tuesday, and it went right past Sully's all the way up to the West Lawn Cemetery. That was not from our traffic change at Maple Ave. That was a pure traffic congestion as normal for the high school. I was at the high school that morning and watched traffic flowing into that school, into the parking lot, not backed up at all. Our SRO was out front. We had no problem getting cars into the back lot or the front lot. It seems to be the traffic congestion is the cars coming off of Worthy Hill, off of Walls, and the circle itself. We're having obviously an increased traffic of cars coming from Pinardville turning into the traffic circle, going up Wallace Road, which is causing a lot of traffic. That just gets us right back to bumper. It seems from what I saw on Wednesday and today when I was down there at 7:50 that traffic wasn't backed up that far, but there is a normal traffic backup on South Mass when school's in session. It's just kind of predictable. We have some really good data that we've collected. We did not see, so Tuesday was our busiest day. The afternoon was the busiest part of that. We started seeing cars stack up in the live parking at about 2 o'clock on, as typically or predicted Maple Ave. Cars went around onto Smith Road. They went up Maple Ave. We had one instance of one car blocking a driveway on Smith Road, which was resolved by the homeowner that was actually turning in, asking the person not to block. We haven't had a complaint since. The cars never got past Bend Circle, which was really good. We were wondering, we were at this previous meeting about it going all the way down High Street. It went up Maple Ave probably about 10 car lengths. We watched the first afternoon take about 45 minutes for the kids to get loaded up and leave. School was still trying to figure out their routine. A lot of parents were taking pictures as they were picking up as well. I'm happy to say that today, at the end of our third day, it was about the last car leaving with a child was about 3:21. So we dropped that down. School worked hard at that. We didn't see any traffic congestion this morning or this afternoon. I've talked to several residents in Smith Road who have all said that they have a private Facebook group and text message group, and that they all anticipated some traffic, but pleasantly, they're all surprised it's been going pretty well. We did notice one little hiccup on Smith Road that we got to kind of look at, which is basically just with live parking, that the road width that I don't think we anticipated initially won't sustain 3 cars parked here, cars moving and cars coming up. So that's something that we got to keep an eye on. But we had a couple fire apparatus that came down Elm Street the other day during school traffic, and there was no congestion for those fire trucks to go through. So I'm cautiously optimistic that in the first 3 days, we've been very successful. We went from 7 staff members there to today we had 2. And we had one officer that was up on the backside of Smith Road keeping an eye on that traffic, and he said there wasn't a lot going on up there today. So not a lot of foot traffic today. Sometimes foot traffic kind of creates problems because everybody's crossing Elm Street, but very successful at this point. It seems like South Mass is kind of doing its thing of people are starting to anticipate that traffic, so they're either leaving earlier or a little bit later to beat it. So that's kind of the 30,000 foot. We have a lot of data that we're collecting up on Heather Hill in that area as well.
How about Parker Road, or people are trying to take a left?
Parker Road.
Going out of the high school, the one-way?
Oh, Park Lane.
Park Lane, yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay. So when they leave Park Lane, I know that the staff or the administration of the high school always advises them to make a right, because they don't really want the students to make a left because of that blind curve.
Right.
We had one instance for about 2 minutes yesterday where Park Lane was backed up. We sent an officer over there, and what that did was it clogged up the cars trying to go behind the school because the line was kind of backing up. And all that was just a matter of getting those cars off of Park Lane. But that I haven't seen that happen ever until the other day. So I don't know if that was just a fluke or what it was, but I don't see a lot of cars making the left because I think the administration says don't make the left. Go out
behind the school,
behind the high school.
Wallace,
Yeah,
right.
yeah. So yeah, I would say, and real quick, if I could, Mr. Chair, we only saw up on the Heather Hill back area, we had a radar trailer up there, and we only saw an increase when we compared to different weeks of a total of 177 cars difference from the Tuesday to Thursday of the week before to the Tuesday or Thursday of this week. We saw an increase on Tuesday of 87 cars, Wednesday was 59 cars, and Thursday was an increase of only 31 cars in that Heather Hill, Jasmine Lane, where they come up Page, Winter Hill, and Heather come back. So overall, we've heard some positive comments from the people that are there, the people we've talked to parked. The staff seems to be pretty happy about it, but crazy there. 530 students at Maple Ave this year, 27 kids per classroom, and they have 12 buses. So that's what we're faced with. That's kind of the...
All in all, sounds like a pretty successful trial run, Chief.
I am cautiously optimistic. Yes, I think next week we have a 4-day week that we're going to dedicate our resources, probably not as many, to kind of continue the efforts and see how it's working. Adam and I are working on finalizing the signage that we need there. But overall, this first week was really successful.
And as far as Smith Road, it seems to me as though if that with a combination of restricting parking and or maybe some pavement modifications.
I would say at this point, I think we're doing okay. You know, the messaging from the school would probably just speed it to the parents, don't block the driveways. I think that was merely the biggest concern. You know, we'll have to look at telling them to stay as right as they can. I think some people tended to stay right in the middle of the road when they were live parking, which caused a little bit of an issue. But you know, I think once people get the hang of it, it was the first 3 days. They'll get the hang of it, and you know, we'll have a few issues with the snowbanks, but I think overall it was pretty successful.
Sounds great.
Okay, let's go on to your grant request.
Okay, thank you. So, yes, I am late. We received this grant notification from the Department of Safety August 10th. This was a grant that's being presented to all law enforcement in the state for body cam, either purchases, replacements, or cloud data storage. As you all know, or if you don't know, our department employs body-worn cameras to all of our officers that are on the street. We were one of the first departments in the state to have that and implement the program. We started that back in 2014. We currently have the same technology we had since then, and our end of life is coming. Our plan was to slowly start to replenish our body cameras through the operating budget by adding some budget lines, maybe 5 depending on the year, and just keep replacing them until we get to an entire 28 to 30. This opportunity presented itself in front of us, and I wanted to come and just ask the board if you're willing to let me apply for this grant. You'll see there's a memo in your packet from Lieutenant Hammond, who's spearheading this. But essentially what we're looking to do is, if you would be inclined to letting me apply for this grant and we are awarded, we're going to look to try to replace all 28 of our body cams and a charging / uploading dock that we would need this year to kind of jump ahead of, get ahead of it, rather than trying to, work, kind of plan it out for the next 3 to 4 years. You'll see in the packet, again, we were the first in the state, one of the first departments in the state to have this. We kind of need that technology to be top of the line. The 28 body cameras, current price of them are $699, which is a total of $19,572. And then one of the docks that we need is about $1,495. The docks themselves, the officers take the body cameras off their bodies, they put them in the dock. When it goes into that dock, it charges and uploads the data automatically to our cloud. One of the things we also looked at with this grant was to offset the cost of our cloud storage that we have. Unfortunately, we're already in a contract with our same vendor, so this grant would not allow us to utilize that reimbursement to offset that cost, because we are in that contract. So right now, we're just looking to see if we can apply, and if we're awarded, we'd like to try to allocate some funds to buy these now and not 3, 4, 5 years down the road.
This is all or nothing?
If we are awarded this grant, we would like to try to go all for this. I will tell you that if we're not awarded the grant, or you choose not to let us apply for this grant, we're putting our budget together now. We do have funds allocated to start to refresh our body line. We're just not going to do it all at once. We would spread that out over the cost of a couple of years to refresh them all. We just saw this opportunity as maybe we could capitalize this to try to get the majority of them now and get a 50% reimbursement, basically cutting the cost in half for the taxpayer.
Collis, you got any questions?
No, I'm prepared to make a motion if you'd like, Peter.
We got, Kelly's got a question.
I do. Chief, you mentioned that the total cost is $21,000. If approved, it'll be $10,500-ish, which is, half the amount.
Yes.
Would you use that money immediately to just purchase as many as you possibly can, and then keep those budget lines to replace the other half, kind of incrementally, or how would you?
So currently, we would use the money to replace the entire dated body cameras we have now, which are 28, and add a dock. We have a newer dock that holds, they hold about 10 apiece, and we have 4 older technology ones. So we still have a line of body cameras that we own right out that our officers use. So we're looking to replace those with a newer technology. I think to answer your question is, if we're awarded this grant, we would try to get everything replaced at once.
Mm-hmm. And then the second half, what would you do with that? Because it says the total cost is $21,000, reimbursement amount is $10,500. So what would you do with the remaining?
My understanding is that's just we're going to pay the $21,000, and the state's going to reimburse us that $10,000.
Right. So that's in your budget right now?
Well, it's not, and I recognize it is in the budget due to savings, and I recognize the optics of not putting it in during the budget season, and we have to go through the budget committee cycle and the board to kind of reallocate those funds because we didn't budget for them. That's why I'm here to kind of ask for you guys to, if we do this and we capitalize on this, the hope is that we could use some of the money in our budget that we're gonna save through wages of a position that we don't have filled at this moment to offset that cost.
What would we do with the old body cams? What happens to those?
So we would keep them potentially for spares if we have some that go down. What we've been seeing with these older ones now is that as the batteries become a problem or they have a issue, we have to then order a new one. They send us the new one, and then that one's down. So we'd like to have a few spares, so that way when the officer goes out on the street, they have a body camera. Our officers do not want to go on the street without a body camera now. So having them on the side as a spare would be beneficial. I have not researched through our vendor if they would buy them back at cost, like if they give us any money. I haven't got that far yet.
Okay. And then my last question, you said you guys got the grant on 810, so why the hesitation to not bring it to us last meeting?
You know, I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that. I think the part of the problem was we received the notification. I put Lieutenant Hammond on it. He started digging into it, doing some research. We had a big command staff meeting about it. We were trying to figure out what the best approach was, and then, you know, we just put it together. And you know, talking to Derek, I realized I got to a point where we were getting last minute, and I was very lucky that we had this meeting here. Yeah, I think it got away from us, to be honest with you.
Okay.
When does it have to be spent?
So it doesn't say. The rules say that the commission will go through it. They'll award it. They'll tell you if you're denied within 30 days. It doesn't tell you when they're going to award it.
No.
The grant manager has reached out to us after we asked that, and she said she anticipates it being awarded no later than January 1st. So, you know, the idea for us was to make sure that we would try to get it and spend it by this year, and if not, and it was awarded next year, we'd have to reevaluate where we're at with next year.
I don't understand what you just said. Why would you have to reevaluate? You need them now, you're gonna need them next year.
Right, I meant like reevaluate what we're doing with the funding and how we're gonna offset that cost of $21,000 of next year's budget in January 1st.
Chief, how long have we had our current cameras for? Because it says you have to maintain for a minimum of 5 years.
14, he said, 2014.
We purchased them and
The
employed
ones
them
we have
in
now. were the ones-
2014.
Okay, thank you.
And we have no anticipation of getting rid of them.
Okay.
So the 5-year commitment is nothing
Yep.
for us. So again, we're looking for the board to give us the okay to apply for it. If we receive it, we'll come back to you. I believe that's the rules here, and verify you guys are still good with us to accept it and formulate a game plan of how we're gonna go about that.
I get a motion.
Go ahead.
Or-
Well, Collis, you wanna make the motion?
Yeah, sure. I'll make a motion to authorize the chief of police to apply for a grant to be used for the purchase of body cameras and/or replacement of older body cameras. Do we need a dollar amount there, Derek, or not to exceed amount?
No, it's a grant.
No, because again, it's a grant application. You're authorizing him to submit the application, and any award would be subject to acceptance by the board at a future meeting.
Further approval, yeah, okay, great. Okay, so that's the motion.
I
Second.
second his motion.
Mark, you have it.
Motion by Collis, seconded by Mark, to approve chief of police to submit for the grant. Just one comment that I have is, taking monies that are allocated for one thing and using them for something without going through the process. And I say that every time we do this, we haven't followed the process on this. And I would hope that maybe if we are awarded the grant during our upcoming budget talks,
Yeah.
we could just bounce it off the budget committee and say, hey, look, this is what happened, and, you know, we'd like to go with it. So that's always a concern of mine when we allocate money for personnel, and then we take that personnel money and use it for hardware.
Right.
I'm always leery of doing that.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, I 100% understand where you're coming from, and I agree with you, and I would be willing to sit in front of the budget committee and you guys as well during the process and explain that. Absolutely. I understand that.
Okay, so the motion's on the floor. It was motioned by Collis, seconded by Mark. All in favor?
Aye.
Roll call.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's roll call. Mark?
Yes, sir.
Collis?
Yes.
Myself say yes.
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 5-0.
Peter,
Yep,
can I be excused so I can go back into my appointment, please?
yep, go ahead.
All right, thank you all very
Thank
much.
you.
Have a good weekend.
You too.
Chief.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop off the call as well, folks.
We got
We have
one
a
more,
non-public.
we got one more thing.
Okay, that's great. I will hang in.
Okay, so,
Do we have to go in non-public?
Motion.
yes, I'd ask that you go to non-public under,
I'll make a motion to go into non-public under RSA 91-A:3 for B, hiring.
Second.
Roll call. Collis?
Yes.
Mia, yes.
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 Okay, we'll be in non-public. You wanna go next door?
no, I'd like to stay